Hi church family, I miss you. I miss being able to hang together, to laugh, to pray, to worship, to celebrate, to learn, to grow, to eat. We miss doing these things together, but we still believe God's at work. We believe that God's at work in and through every situation, including this one, bringing blessings to the kingdom and to this church. I mean, who could have imagined 4 weeks ago we would be where we're at today? And yet this week we've trialled having Zoom prayer meetings where we can still pray together for the kingdom and for this church as we go forward. And depending on when you're watching this, at Sunday at 10:15am, we're going to have a Zoom chat about the service and particularly about the sermon through Zoom. So we encourage you to get those links, to go and sign up to the email if you haven't already got it. And today is going to look a little different too. We're going to do the sermon in 3 parts. And at the end of each part, we're going to give you a question. We're going to give you a time to stop and pause, to pause the recording and to consider a question that is raised. And if you're with others, to again have a bit of a chat with them about what is happening in and through the questions that are raised at this time. And it will be these 3 questions that form the basis of our Zoom get-together on Sunday morning at 10:15. But the first part that I want us to consider today is the celebration of Peter and Annette Bosca. We had planned to celebrate them and their ministry in the life of the school. As a church, we want to have a high value on honour and celebration. We want to honour people for who they are, for how God has made them. And we want to celebrate both what they bring to the church community, and when it's time for them to move on, we want to celebrate and give thanks. And so today it grieves us that we can't celebrate Peter and Annette the same way that we would like to. We planned all sorts of different things and some of that has had to be taken away. But today we still want to take some time to celebrate Peter and Annette, and particularly Peter's role as principal of the school. And so I've asked Chairman Phil, the chairman of the school board, to come and share some thoughts around Peter and Annette.
Hi church, Phil here. For those of you who don't remember or have not been here very long, we've got a beautiful school that is aligned with Right Baptist Church and is one of our ministries here, and that's North Cross. And for 5 or 6 years now, we've had the wonderful benefit of having Principal Peter Bosca and his wife Annette Bosca work at this school. Those who know Peter and Annette well will know quite a bit of what I am going to say to you now about them. First of all, I want to talk to them and talk a little bit about them as a couple. And they're a wonderful couple. They're a godly couple. They take their work really seriously. For them, Christian education is a ministry. And they just love it, and they love the kids. First of all, just a few words about Annette. Annette, you're a servant. That's the big thing that's always stood out for me about you. Whenever you're in the room, you're looking to meet other people's needs. You make sure that chocolates are out for Chairman Phil, which is really important, but you're always there for people and you're always looking to serve them. And I thank you for that. We'll miss you. Peter, your leadership as principal of the school has been crucial over the last years. Few people know perhaps within the church just how much time and effort it takes to lead a school with 360 children and nearly 40 staff. It's a big, big job. You've given it everything. You've given of yourself as a person. You've given of yourself as a Christian. You've given of yourself as a friend. And you've given of yourself professionally. And the results have just been fantastic. We really appreciate all that you've done for these years. And on behalf of the board, on behalf of the parents at the school, we thank you both. Peter and Annette, we wish you all the best for the years to come. And Peter, just to remind you, I do go up to Sunshine Coast every now and again, and I do expect to find you shaven each morning, whatever you're doing, and as Pastor Brendan and I warned you, please don't grow a man bun. That would be the end of the world. Bless you both. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Peter was away sick the day that we videoed, but here are a few photos of him and Annette at their farewell by the school. One reflection I'd like to make about Peter and Annette is that I'm so thankful for Peter's ministry here and for Annette's role in the life of the school and the church. Peter, the school and the church are better for your ministry, and we are so thankful for that. I'm thankful that I came at a time such as this where we could work together. I'm thankful for how you've left the school, how you've led the school, and how we've been able to work together. And both the school and the church are better for your ministry. So what I want to do is take a time for reflection, as I said. I want to take a time where you can pause and ponder and think about what I'm going to ask, and take some time either by yourself or with others to spend some time thinking about this question. And the question is this. I want you to stop and give thanks for Peter's role as principal and for Peter and Annette's role in the life of the school and the church, to celebrate and honour and give thanks for them and what they've done. But I also want you to ask some questions. I want you to consider somebody for whom you would want to honour and celebrate for their contribution to your life generally, and somebody for whom you would want to honour and celebrate for their contribution to your life, particularly in the last 6 months or so. As I said previously, we couldn't give Peter and Annette the celebration that they deserve. We couldn't give them the celebration parade that we wanted to. But some of you will be aware that Annette, Pastor Annette, was born in India. Her parents were missionaries over there and served over there for a long time. Annette grew up there and went to boarding school in her early life there. And in our late 20s, we got the opportunity to go to India to see where she grew up, to see her home, to see her school, and to see the people that she interacted with as a young girl. And when we were over there, we had 2 extremely overwhelming and humbling celebration parades thrown for us. The first of those was from a man called Samuel. And you're going to see some photos come up on the screen. The first photo that you're going to see is of a man named Samuel and his family. They called him Chinny Samuel. Samuel worked for Annette's family and he got ill. And Annette's family paid for life-saving medication for him. And so when we went back, Chinny Samuel, provided this celebration meal for Annette's family. They put on this lavish meal by their standards, everything laid on. In fact, they didn't even eat with us. They came and served us food and celebrated us and thanked us for the contribution that Annette's family had made to saving his life. It was a profoundly overwhelming and humbling experience. The second photo that you'll see, or the second series of photos that you'll see, are of us being welcomed into a girls' hostel. It was associated with Annette's family's ministry. And we arrived to all the girls dressed in their best outfits and all lined up and singing songs and cheering and celebrating. And as you walk down that driveway past all of these girls, again, it was just one of the most profoundly humbling and overwhelming experiences of my life to be welcomed and celebrated in such a way. Well, today we see Jesus receive a celebration parade. In fact, in John's Gospel, it says that they went and cut down palm trees or palm leaves and laid them before Jesus. And that's why this Sunday before Easter, is called Palm Sunday. But let's read together the account from Matthew's Gospel. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say, 'The Lord needs them,' and he will send them right away." This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. "Say to daughter Zion, see your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowd that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this?" The crowds answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." Let me help you understand the setting a bit. It's right near the end of Jesus' ministry. It's about a week until the death and resurrection of Jesus. It's at a time that the Jews celebrated called the Passover. It was a time when they celebrated the release from Egypt and going through the wilderness and into the Promised Land. And you can read about that in the early part of the book of Exodus. It's this time of great religious and national zeal. It's this time when they remember and look forward to the Messiah coming, the one who will kick the Romans out, who will release them from this slavery, and who will instill somebody in the line of David on the throne. It's this time when they gather together and celebrate what God has done and what they are looking forward to him to do. There's so much depth in this account. But today I just want to highlight 5 quick points for you. The first of those is that Jesus comes. Look at what the passage says. Your King comes to you. Ponder that for a moment. The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the one who created the entire world, the one who created the universe and holds it together, he comes to us. He doesn't wait for us to come to him. He doesn't make us crawl to him. He comes to us. Secondly, I want to highlight that he is gentle. The Bible tells us your King comes to you and he comes gently. It's the same word that Jesus uses to talk about himself in Matthew chapter 11 when he says, "I come to you, come to me all you who are weary and I will give you rest, for I am gentle." It's the same word that is used in the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew when it says the meek or the gentle will inherit the earth. Jesus not only comes to us, but he comes gently to us. Thirdly, he comes to us on a donkey, the Bible tells us. Now, it doesn't mean that royalty would never travel on a donkey. But somebody coming to announce that their kingdom is reigning and ruling, somebody who's coming to announce the overthrow of prisoners, they do not come on a donkey. They come on a horse, on a stallion, on something that produces fear and intimidation. But Jesus, our King, the one who comes to us gently, comes humbly on a donkey. Next, I want to remind you that he comes from Nazareth. The Bible passage goes on to near the end of what we read and it says, who is he? This guy comes from Nazareth. I want to remind you, Nazareth is like a backwater. It's not the religious capital. It's not the place where the special people come from. In fact, we know in the Gospels when Nathanael is asked about Jesus and Nathanael is told Jesus comes from Nazareth, he says, Nazareth, can anything good come from there? And the last point I want to highlight very briefly is that Jesus' disciples are the overlooked ones. We don't have time to go into it now. But what we do know is that the disciples, to become a disciple of a rabbi, to be somebody who could be called a disciple of a rabbi, meant going through a whole range of steps. And at each part, some people passed and they kept going and some people didn't pass. There's these steps along the way. And what we know is when they didn't pass, when they weren't able to keep going on the road of discipleship, they went and did other things like carpentry Or, like our disciple, or like many of the disciples that Jesus had, fishermen. Jesus takes these people that are overlooked, that have, in a sense, failed the system, that, in a sense, aren't good enough to be somebody's disciples. And he chooses them. In the world that Jesus lived in, disciples went and asked the master, the rabbi, if they could follow him. They basically put their CV in like a job interview. Here, Jesus comes to these people who've been overlooked and he says, "Will you follow me?" In all of this account, what we see is Jesus acting very differently to how you might expect him to. And so this leaves us with our second question, our second thing to ponder and to press pause on and to talk around. And that is this: what is it about Jesus in this account that stands out to you, and why? Now, I've been to sporting events where people yell and shout, hug each other when their team scores a goal and all of those sorts of things. And I've also seen God move in ways that has reduced people to tears or laughter or celebration or joy. But this account must have been something to be seen. This account must have been something to stand out. Let's read some of it again. In Matthew chapter 21, it says it like this: "But the very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, 'Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest.'" In fact, in Luke's Gospel, it says that Jesus came and the Pharisees said, "Why don't you tell these people to stop saying this?" And Jesus says, "If I tell them to stop, these stones will cry out and shout about me." And all of this shouting and yelling and laying down of cloaks had an impact, because the Bible tells us in this account that the whole city stirred and thought, "Who is this man?" Ponder that for a moment. A busy city, a vibrant city, and a live city. A city full of people and noise, and yet somehow there is such celebration going on, there is such amazement happening that everybody turns and says, "Who is this man?" And there is a challenge here for us, I think, in this Easter season. To allow our shouting, in a sense, to allow our lives, to allow our speech to be one in which causes people to stop and say, "Who is this Jesus?" To not shout out in loud, abusive, arrogant ways, but in gentleness and respect, gently like Jesus does. To allow our shouting, our life, our attitude, our words, our actions, to allow them all to say something loudly about the person of Jesus. Jesus has always been good news. He's always been good news. At the very beginning, the shepherds are in the field and the angel comes and the angel says this. He says, "Behold, this is good news of great joy for all people." So Jesus has always been good news, always has, always is, and always will be. But in a world today, in a world that is frightened and anxious, in a world that is suffering and straining under this current system of the virus and all that is happening, in a world where people are worried about their jobs and their income, where they might be asking, does God even care about me? Does God care about my family? Into that world, Jesus is very good news. Always has, always is, and always will be. And so in this season, let us shout loudly about Jesus. Again, not in arrogant, uncaring ways, but let us not be silenced. Let us not have the good news of Jesus be silenced from us. Because the gentle King who comes, the one who comes gently and humbly, has always been, is and will always be good news that's worth declaring. So reflection 3 is simply this: to ponder how you can shout, not in arrogance, but in gentleness and humility, but how you can shout loudly about Jesus this week, so that the people that you know, the people you have contact with, the people in your frame of reference, those people could turn and look at Jesus and start to see him as good news for themselves. And so today we grieve that we can't meet together. We miss meeting together. But today we declare that God is still at work. He is still at work in us and through us. He is still doing something in the kingdom and in the world that is worthy of celebrating. But today we also want to declare and say some things to be true. We want to declare that we want to give thanks and honour and celebrate the good people God has placed in our lives. Secondly, we want to be again astounded at King Jesus, again marvel at who he is. And thirdly, we want to declare and shout how good he is to those around us, so that they may also see Jesus as good news of great joy for all people. May you be blessed on this Palm Sunday, and as we celebrate and lead into the Easter experience that will be quite different for many of us. God bless.